Okay, so here we are. We're already on the 4th video. Hopefully by this time you've come up with some great ideas. I'm sure you have. This one is called ideate. Fancy term for to create ideas, to conceive of, imagine, or envision something. This is a really fun section because you really can take your imagination and let it fly and come up with ideas. So far you've come up with who your client is, what your parameters are, what your priorities are, what your overlapping functions are, and now the fun part, taking all those 4 considerations and putting them into a plan that's really beautiful. What you have to do is start drawing your ideas and putting them down on a plan. And the other thing you have to do is take into consideration your real place. By now you have picked a site. And what you need to know is, the very first thing every landscaper does is find north. So you take out your compass. I'm going to show you a compass. You put it down. Sometimes you stand there, you look at your north arrow, and why is this important? Because it tells you where the path of the sun is. And because you're going to be using plants, you have to know where they will do best. So for example, you're not going to put your biggest tree on the south side of your garden so that it shades the whole garden. The plants won't grow well. You'll put it on the north side of the garden so that you are open to the sun. And you look at where the sun comes. In the winter, the sun is lower on the horizon and creates shadows like this. In the summer, the sun comes overhead and creates a completely different pattern. So you have to look at your site for where north is and how the sun will change over the seasons. You'll have to look at existing buildings that create shadow and existing trees. You're going to take your tape measure, you're going to go on the site, and you're going to start measuring off your site and put it on graph paper to scale so that you can actually make sense of what you do. Then you're going to start doing what I call the bones. The very first thing you do in a plan is set out the structure of the garden. Where are the paths going? How wide do they need to be? You have to make sure they're safe. Do you have any structures or buildings, a tool shed, an arbor, a deck, that kind of thing? You lay these down where you think they should go, and then you worry about where the plants are going to go. You also have to look at your drainage and any retaining walls or fencing. So those are the bones, and that's the structure. What I just want to show you here in this ideate video is some imaginations I had and how they went from my mind to paper to a plan to actually being installed. I had this idea for a client. She had a front yard and she wanted a fence. We had to let light through it so it would be wire, but she didn't want it ugly. And she said she loved the idea of the sun and of circles. So I had this idea that a rising sun should come through the different stages of the fence. And I put it on a CAD program, and it was sort of simple. And here's the sun with the sun rays. It then went from that to a sketch of a circle or a nautilus or a swirl coming through the fence. And here's a picture of the fence as if it was finally finished by a welder and an artist who did this sort of sculpture in copper. This next idea was that a client had no actual land, but she had walls, and I said, why can't we build a hanging planter? She loves succulents, but hanging planters you can plant with anything. You can plant them with herbs or lettuce or strawberries. Many plants will do well in hanging planters. And I went from the idea of a nautilus using the Fibonacci sequence, which is found in nature, to a large nautilus that was welded and then planted and ended up looking like this hanging on her wall. These are just imaginations I had, and they went from a sketch to an actual real-life event. And finally, I had a client that had young children. We talked about what fun things we could build for the kids. She happened to have kind of a hilly area, very steep, and it was a way, instead of being a problem, like how are they going to get the kids from the lowest to the top part of the garden, I said, well, why not make a climbing structure, like a rope climbing thing? And why not make it as a dream catcher and make it beautiful? And so I went online and I found a picture of an actual dream catcher, and then we looked at how we might fold the rope to a sketch of what it would look like on the site, how many posts we would need, how deep they'd need to be put in the ground, and we ended up building a 15-foot climbing structure for her 3 children, and that's what it ended up looking like. So, ideate away.